Hello, the Pioneer viewers. As you know, our agenda is the Russia-Ukraine war. And while the war continues in full violence on the front, the developments in the background helps us to interpret the war processes. And war is a reality that the states experience difficult processes. In times of the war, it is necessary to harm the enemy through various means and achieve its goals. In this context, the states have armed armies, tanks and rifles. But then, are the weapons enough to achieve victory? When we are examining the historical processes from the past to the present, it has been observed that at some times huge armies have been defeated by the smaller armies. In fact, there is a power that defeats huge armies without even fighting. The power is intelligence. Information can turn into a huge weapon depending on the context in which it used. Intelligence organizations also make information valuable, and they can turn small bites of the information into the main theme of a big operation. Intelligence agencies work to do what is the interest of their country. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has created major security challenges. In the regions outside the front line, insecurity is perceived. The hardship of the war on one side and the struggle for survival on the other side continues. And while the sides continue their mutual attacks, shadows, wars continue to take place in the background. There is a reality that I've mentioned many times in our previous news reports. Intelligence organizations undertake very important tasks in times of the war, and it is known that the Ukrainian army uses the information shared by the military intelligence organization while organizing its strategic operations. Ukrainian military intelligence is also working very hard to identify strategic points belonging to the Russian army. After the recent bloody attacks in Moscow, the issues of intelligence has once again entered the agenda. Russia's intelligence services and security services have come under great scrutiny. In recent days, Moscow's leadership has been looking for a target to drown its own guilt over the attacks. So let's take a look at the state of the Russian intelligence in light of the latest developments. As the Pioneer, we continue to cover the Russia-Ukraine war, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. I also read all of your comments on our videos, so please continue to share your ideas about our content in the comments with us. Let's start if you are ready, the Pioneer reports. The shock of the attacks on Moscow's Kirk City Hall and the concert venues is slowly starting to wear off. But the interrogations and investigations that began after the attack continues. Disturbing questions directed at Russia's intelligence and security services remain unanswered. The Russian capital, Moscow, and the whole country is in a deep mourning over the tragedy of the attack, and authorities reported that at least 137 people were killed and 360 injured, including 11 children. The high number of dead and wounded shows the severity of the attacks. Moscow blamed Ukraine for the attacks, but Kiev denounced the accusation as they observed. ISIS-K, a branch of Islamic State militia group, claimed responsibility for the attack, and U.S. intelligence has suggested that the extremist group, which operates largely in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran, was behind the attack. Conflicting signals from Moscow have tried to pin the blame on the U.S. and Ukraine while pointing the finger on the other group. Investigations are ongoing, but this is not the detract from the security Russia's insecurity and the intelligence services are currently under. In particular, the FSB, the successor agency to the Soviet-era KGB, tasked with counterterrorism, has become the subject of the much debate, as it is why it failed to foil the attack plot. Military experts and think tanks evaluating the attacks say it was a major failure of the Russian intelligence and the law enforcement. Experts attribute this tunnel vision. Earlier this month, the U.S. government had information about a planned terrorist attack in Moscow, potentially targeting large gatherings and involving concerts. Adriana Watson, a spokeswoman for the White House National Security Council, said in a statement the day after the attack. The White House said it passed this intelligence on to the Russian authorities and issued a public statement to the American citizens in Russia 15 days before the attack. While it is unclear why Russian intelligence and security services did so little with disinformation, even though relations between Moscow and Washington are more strained than they have been for years. Russian intelligence has also failed to prove its mettle during the war. The Ukrainian army had many operational skills, such as location, source identification, reconnaissance, and surveillance fights. The terrorist attack at the Moscow concert hall has shattered the images of the Russian President Vladimir Putin as the greatest protector of his country. In Russia, the public sympathized with the authoritarian leader Putin. After the recent events, a large part of the population has changed their mind. Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB, said that they had arrested 11 people on the terrorism charges in the previous day, and including 4 suspected men who showed signs of beating in Moscow court. They were quickly charged as the perpetrators of the attack, and tense days continue to unfold in Russia. Many people and institutions have come under security following the attack. British journalist and the author Roger Boyce made important assessments about the recent events. He said that the reason Putin has survived politically for a long time is that he is more protective than the last Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. He also argued that he was more stable than his predecessor Boris Yeltsin. According to Boyce, Putin no longer has dominant leadership credentials for Russia, and the reasons for this, he said, were that the recent attacks on the Kyrgyz town hall undermined his claim to be Russia's sword and shield, immediately revealing the unpreparedness of the security apparatus for a new threat and the low credibility of the regime's war rhetoric. In another assessment, Boyce noted that Putin could use the attacks to distract from the war in Ukraine and freeze the conflict while he focuses on the border war on terrorism. The crisis could also mean that Putin has already lost control and that internal squabbles within the intelligence establishment have allowed the mechanism to spiral out of control. The days in Moscow continue to be eventful and tense. Investigations into the attacks are expected to be completed in the coming days. So, what do you think? Do you think Russian intelligence has failed? Why do you think that the Ukrainian army's intelligence is successful? And what do you think is the decisive factor in the war? And what do you think about the intelligence agencies in general? I care about your opinion, so please share it with me.